Here is the recap of American Horror Story 1984. The story begins in 1970 when a massacre occurs at Camp Redwood. A serial killer nicknamed Mr. Jingles breaks into the summer cabins and brutally murders counselors and children before cutting off his victims' ears. 14 years pass. A girl named Brooke starts taking aerobics classes where she meets Montana, Chet, Xavier, and Ray. From one of the guys, the girl learns about a killer nicknamed Night Stalker, who has already killed several people in the city. To escape from their own problems and protect themselves, the main characters decide to go to the camp as counselors and offer the new girl to go with them. Brooke refuses at first, but when Night Stalker breaks in at night, she changes her mind and goes out of town with her new friends. It turns out that the main characters decided to work at Camp Redwood, which after the massacre in the 70s was closed, but since this year has resumed work. On the way, the guys hit a man and decide to take him with them to bring him to the camp and provide first aid. Margaret meets the main characters at the summer cottages. She is the sponsor who decided to reopen the camp. The owner tells the counselors where to take the injured man, where Nurse Rita will look after him. In the evening of the same day, the main characters learn the history of this place. It turns out that on that very night of 1970, Margaret was one of the counselors. She is the only one who managed to survive, and that only because she did not even turn a blind eye when the killer cut off her ear, thinking that she was dead. Soon another camp worker, Trevor, shows up. Montana liked him right away, so he didn't resist when she asked him to swim naked in the lake. The guys are talking to each other, and Ray accidentally hurts his arm, and Brooke volunteers to help him. She tries to find bandages and some antiseptic, as she suddenly notices the corpse of the very guy they picked up on the road. The girl is horrified. She goes back and tells her buddies about everything. However, they do not believe in her story, considering Brooke too impressionable. Only the main characters do not know that the maniac Richter, also known as Mr. Jingles, escaped from the mental hospital and really came to Redwood. Brooke still finds the place strange, and after a creepy phone call, her fear only intensifies. The girl is looking for support from Montana, so she decides to tell about her failed wedding a year ago. It turns out that her fiancé was very jealous, and suspecting her and a friend of betrayal, he killed a buddy right at the altar and then took his own life. After telling this story, Brooke goes outside and eventually wanders to the pier where she is found by Night Stalker. It turns out that this killer is also in the Redwoods and has come for her, but he fails to chase Brooke. Meanwhile, Xavier is found by a man named Blake, who blackmails him by forcing him to star in adult movies. Except the guy is sick of it, and he decides to offer Trevor instead. The guys approach the showers so that Blake can assess the physical data of a potential employee, and Xavier leaves at this time. Only a moment later, Mr. Jingles appears and kills Blake, after which he cuts off his ear. Margaret meets Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and learns about his troubled childhood, which most likely caused him to become a killer. The woman manages to convince Night Stalker to protect her from Mr. Jingles. In return, she'll deal with the guy Ramirez killed, and the guy suddenly resurrected. When the woman finds him in the woods, she recognizes him as a counselor from 1970. It turns out that he has become a ghost tied to the place. Meanwhile, the counselors find Blake's body without an ear and realize that Richter has indeed appeared at the camp. They decide to escape while there is still such an opportunity, except that the keys to the car and motorcycle are left in the cabins. The main characters have to split up. Rita and Brooke stay by the car, and a moment later, the nurse injects the girl with a tranquilizer so she can't escape. Turns out she's not Rita, she's Donna. She's the one who helped Mr. Jingles escape from the asylum to observe him in his so-called natural environment. The thing is, her father was also a brutal killer, and Donna wanted to understand what circumstances or reasons drive people to shed blood, hoping it would help her rid the world of violence. Meanwhile, Ray and Chet have fallen into a trap, falling into a pit of sharp stakes. Chet has hit a stick and can't get out on his own. Gradually, his condition gets worse, so Ray decides to tell why he agreed to this job. It turns out that recently, through his fault, a man died. Now he is terrified to count the days, because at any moment evidence can be found against him, and Ray will go to jail. After confession, he decides to escape alone, leaving Chet to die in the pit. Meanwhile, Trevor's group stumbles upon pranksters wearing Mr. Jingles masks and outfits. Turns out they wanted to pretend to be murderers to scare the counselors and kids. Only the joke got out of hand when the real Mr. Jingles showed up and killed the imitators. The main characters run into the woods and hide in a small cabin, where they find a bound nurse. It turns out that she is the real Rita, which means the one they know has been deceiving them. Just then Richter appears and kills the girl. Soon the guys meet Ray in the woods, who, along with Montana, runs to the car to wait for the others. Xavier and Trevor hear Chet's screams and help him out of the hole, and then they hear Richter's keys jingling and decide to kill him by pushing him into the hole. Except it wasn't the real Mr. Jingles, but one of a trio of those impersonators, two of whom are already dead. Near the car, Montana notices footprints on the ground, but Rita and Brooke are nowhere to be found. The couple waits for their friends, but when Ramirez shows up, Ray gets scared and drives off alone. However, he fails to escape as Mr. Jingles chops off his head. At this time, it becomes known that Night Stalker and Montana are quite close. Turns out she was the one who asked him to kill Brooke, and that attack in her house was no accident. The thing is that Montana wants to avenge her for the death of his brother, because he was shot by Brooke's ex-fiancée. Xavier runs into the dining room to save the cook, when suddenly Mr. Jingles shows up. At first he didn't intend to kill her, but when he noticed the guy under the table, he went on the attack. In the end, the killer puts Xavier in the oven and injures the cook, then leaves to look for Margaret. Soon the cook opens the oven. Xavier survives and then, at her request, puts the woman out of her misery. Meanwhile, it turns out that it wasn't actually Mr. Jingles who massacred the Redwoods 14 years ago, but Margaret. She cut off her ear on purpose to make herself look like a victim. The girl knew that Richter had been in the war and had gotten a special reputation, so no one would have doubted that he was the killer. Mr. Jingles himself also thought he was guilty. After countless tortures with electricity and various medications in the asylum, the man believed he was involved. Margaret ends up shooting Richter, and then also kills Trevor, who came running to save her. Except that while she was distracted by the guy, Mr. Jingles escaped. Brooke manages to escape from Donna, but she soon finds herself trapped and is left powerless. Montana finds her and promises to help, but actually tells Ramirez where she is so he can kill her. So Night Stalker comes to Brooke and immediately Mr. Jingles shows up. The killers start fighting and Ramirez dies, and soon resurrects like a demon, since the guy worships Satan. This phenomenon is witnessed by Donna. Meanwhile, the guys gather at the car, and Margaret pretends that Trevor was killed by Richter. The counselors return to the cabin, and the camp owner suggests going to the other side of the lake to call someone for help. Chet goes with her, not yet knowing that it was a trap and Margaret will kill him. Meanwhile, Donna arrives and tells the boys the truth that she brought Mr. Jingles to the camp. Xavier is furious because he almost burned alive in the oven because of this psychopath, so he decides to take out his anger on the pseudo-nurse. Richter finds Margaret and tries to kill her, but Xavier shoots him with a bow. The guy doesn't expect a twist, and in a moment Margaret takes his life. Brooke meets Ray and decides to sleep with him, but soon she sees his severed head and realizes that he is dead, and that she was talking to a ghost who has not yet realized that he is gone. Brooke returns to Montana's cabin and learns that she is the one who sent the Night Stalker to avenge her brother's death. The girls begin to fight with each other, and at sunrise Brooke kills her pseudo-friend. But this act, as it turned out, has witnesses. The thing is that at that very moment a bus with children arrived at the camp. Brooke is arrested, and Margaret testifies against her, saying that she killed all these people. While the police are looking into what happened, Ramirez and Richter, whom he resurrected with the help of Satan, escape. A few years later, Montana and Xavier, as camp ghosts, kill random campers, causing them to have a bad relationship with Ray and the 70s counselors. Mr. Jingles travels the country with the Night Stalker, who kills everyone indiscriminately. Eventually, Richter gets tired of this and decides to get rid of Ramirez by turning him in to the authorities. Once behind bars, The man sees a familiar face among the prisoners, Brooke. She lost the last appeal, and now the death penalty awaits her. Meanwhile, Margaret has gotten rich in real estate with a dark past. She married Trevor, who miraculously survived her attempted murder. To raise as much money as possible, Margaret decides to throw another event in the Redwoods. She is sure that the place of bloody beatings will certainly attract the attention of the sophisticated public. About the upcoming event learns and Richter, who changed his name, went to Alaska, married, and became a father. The man receives an invitation to another massacre from Ramirez when he escapes from prison, kills his wife, and leaves him a message. Mr. Jingles hands his son over to his late lover's sister and returns to Redwood to kill Night Stalker, securing his child's future. Meanwhile, Brooke's sentence is carried out. But soon it turns out that Donna saved her by injecting her with a special medicine that imitates death. After that, the girls go to Redwood to take revenge on Margaret, who has already arrived at the camp with her husband. There, Trevor meets Montana. Over the years, his feelings for her have not disappeared, so he wants to become a ghost of this place and be with her forever. The girl pushes Trevor away, wishing him a better future than the eternal wandering of an untamed soul. Soon, Mr. Jingles returns to Redwood, where the local ghosts are not happy to see him. However, they are most concerned about a certain lady in white terrorizing them all. It turns out that this stranger is Richter's dead mother. The thing is that the history of this campground began long before the 70s. Back then, Mr. Jingles was just a kid, so he didn't keep an eye on his younger brother. The boy ended up dead, and his mother blamed him and the counselors for everything. At some point, she decided to take revenge and organized a massacre, and Richter, trying to keep himself safe, killed his own mother, making her the first ghost of the place. The meeting with the relative does not go very smoothly, because she still blames him for the death of her son. After a while, however, the woman becomes imbued with maternal love and advises Richter to kill himself in order to take revenge on Ramirez and save his boy. Mr. Jingles does so, because his resurrection in the Redwoods a few years ago was with the help of Satan, which means that if Ramirez kills him, he will immediately go to hell and will not be able to protect his son. Soon Richter is caught by local ghosts and killed by throwing him into a boat. But moments later, someone drags him into the lake, after which the man regains consciousness on the shore with his younger brother and mother. The family persuades Richter to stay with them. 30 years pass. Mr. Jingles' son named Bobby decides to come to the campground after the death of his aunt in hopes of finding his father. At the campground, he is met by Montana and Trevor. The main characters tell the guy everything that happened in 1989. It turns out that then Margaret shot Trevor outside the camp, which means that if he died, he could not become a ghost and be with Montana. So help came from nowhere. Despite the fact that Montana wanted to kill Brooke, she helped her lover reach the camp line, realizing that they can't get rid of Ramirez. The ghosts decide to kill him time after time, which they do for 30 years. While Bobby and the ghosts are talking, Ramirez manages to escape. He almost kills Bobby, but the main characters save him. Montana advises the guy to go to the clinic and find Donna, which he does. She answers the rest of the questions, including a story about Brooke. The girl died fighting Margaret, who was eventually chopped to pieces by the ghosts and thrown over the fence, though parts of that killer did make it to Redwood. Bobby thanks Donna for the truth and the money she's been sending him all this time, except it turns out she didn't. Then the main characters guess that Brooke could have survived after all and get on her trail. It turns out that that day she was helped to escape by the ghost of Ray, and then she did not want to remember all this and started her life from scratch. Bobby returns to the camp, hoping to find his father. Margaret's ghost tries to kill him, but Richter shows up and saves him. Bobby says goodbye to his uncle, grandmother, and father and leaves. This is the end of Season 9. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.